When the armed strike team breached the main gate, the Kang family had 7 minutes to live. Their only chance was the Black Maid everyone ignored, because she had spent 6 months secretly mapping the one thing the architects never put on the blueprints, a hidden tunnel system under the compound. Her name was Adana, a 28-year-old from Nigeria hired to clean and cook. To the Billionaire family, she was part of the furniture. To the security team, she was a non-threat, which is exactly how she moved unseen for months, discovering that the greatest danger to the Kangs wasn't outside the walls, it was already inside the house. Adana Okoye arrived at the Kang compound in Seoul on a rainy Tuesday in March. Her contract was for domestic service, cleaning, laundry, and assisting the family's elderly matriarch, Madam Kang Soo-yeon. She was given a uniform, a keycard that locked her out of the main wing after 9 p.m., and one instruction: be invisible. The compound wasn't a house, it was a fortress, 27 acres in the most exclusive district of the city, surrounded by a 9-meter wall topped with biometric sensors and motion-tracking cameras. Inside, the main residence was a sleek modern structure of glass and steel, but its foundations were older, built atop the ruins of a colonial-era governor's mansion. Security was managed by a private firm run by a man named Yi Kim, a former Special Forces commander. His team of 12 operated from a bunker beneath the garage. They monitored everything, except, as Adana would learn, they didn't monitor the history buried in the walls. Her first week was a study in silence. She learned the rhythms of the Kang family. Patriarch Kang Min-jun, the billionaire, was rarely home, a ghost moving between boardrooms and airports. His wife, Hae-jin, was a former pianist, now brittle and medicated, who spent her days in the sunroom. Their 2 teenage children were away at international boarding schools, and at the center, Madam Kang Soo-yeon, Min-jun's mother. 82 years old, sharp as a blade, and confined to a wheelchair after a stroke. She was the reason Adana was there. The old woman's care was the one thing the security system couldn't automate. Adana's days fell into a pattern: bring breakfast, help Madam Kang dress, read the newspaper to her, take her for walks in the walled garden. It was during one of these walks in the second week that Adana noticed the first irregularity. A service door in the garden's perimeter wall, rusted shut, labeled Boiler Access 1912. But the main boiler room was on the opposite side of the compound. When she asked the head housekeeper, Mrs. Choi, about it, the older woman shrugged. It is old, from the Japanese time, sealed before the war, do not mind it. But Adana did mind. Back in Nigeria, she had studied architectural drafting for a year before her family's finances collapsed. She understood that buildings, especially old ones, tell stories in their bones. She began to pay attention. The floor plans in the staff manual didn't match the actual layout. A hallway on the east wing was 3 meters shorter than the blueprint indicated. A servicing closet had a back wall that sounded hollow when tapped. She mentioned none of this. A curious maid was a troublesome maid, but she started to map the discrepancies in a small notebook using the drafting symbols she remembered. Her quiet observation was shattered one evening in late April. Min-jun was home for a rare family dinner. Adana was clearing the table when she heard raised voices from the study. Min-jun and Yi Kim, the security chief, were arguing. "The threat assessment is credible, Min-jun," Kim said, his voice low but urgent. "The consortium you blocked in Jakarta, they are not businessmen, they have paramilitary connections. The intel suggests a symbolic strike, not an assassination, a message to make you feel vulnerable in your own home." "And your solution?" Min-jun's voice was icy. "We double the perimeter team, we install ballistic shutters, we move you and the family to the safe room at the first sign of a breach. The protocols are in place. My mother cannot be moved quickly to the safe room, you know this. The elevator from her wing is too slow. Then we station a man in her wing permanently. No, she values her privacy, she will not accept it." The argument circled this point, the vulnerable matriarch. Adana froze, a stack of plates in her hands, a symbolic strike, a message. She thought of the hollow walls, the mismatched blueprints. She slipped back into the kitchen, her heart pounding. That night she couldn't sleep. She pulled out her notebook. She drew the main floor, then overlaid the official blueprint from the manual. The discrepancies formed a pattern, They weren't random errors, they were gaps, spaces between the walls that shouldn't exist, a hidden geometry. The next day, while helping Madame Kang bathe, Adana found her moment. The old woman was in a talkative mood, reminiscing about her childhood in this very house before the new structure was built. "My father hated the Japanese governors," Madame Kang said, her eyes distant. "But he was a practical man. When they commandeered the estate, he built alternatives, places to listen, places to hide. He was a patriot, but a living one." Adana, gently drying the woman's shoulders, asked, "Where did he hide, madam?" Madame Kang chuckled softly. "The walls, the floors. This house has more secrets than a government cabinet. When they built the new glass monster on top of it, they sealed most of it away. My son thinks it is all just concrete and wires now." A cold certainty settled in Adana's stomach. The hidden spaces weren't architectural flaws. They were a legacy, a network. She needed to see the original estate plans. It took her 3 weeks. She befriended the compound's agging groundskeeper, Mr. Park, who had worked there since he was a boy. Over shared cigarettes behind the tool shed, he spoke of the old days. One afternoon, he brought her a rolled, yellowed parchment, damp with mildew. "Found this in the gardener's shed years ago. Forgot about it. It's the old house, before the bombs." It was a hand-drawn architectural plan from 1923, and there, clearly marked, was a network of service tunnels. They ran from the main house to the garden wall, to the old carriage house, even to a gatehouse beyond the perimeter. A footnote, in faded Japanese script, had been translated in pencil at the bottom, for discreet staff movement and secure egress. This was it, the compound's secret skeleton, but was it still intact, or had it been filled with concrete during the modern renovation? Adana's mapping project became an obsession. On her days off, she used her keycard access to service areas, tapping walls, measuring corridors. She discovered that a utility shaft behind the laundry room descended much deeper than the basement level. One evening, she pried open a loose ventilation panel in the shaft and shone her phone's light down. She saw not pipes, but a brick corridor, dripping with condensation, stretching into darkness. The tunnel was real, and it was accessible. But as she was silently reassembling the vent cover, she heard a noise above. She looked up to see Choi, the head housekeeper, staring down at her from the top of the shaft, her expression unreadable. She said nothing, turned, and walked away. 2 days later, Adana was called into Security Chief Kim's bunker. The room was all blinking lights and screens showing every corner of the estate. Kim did not look up from a monitor. "Okoi, the head housekeeper, reports you have been exploring in restricted service areas." "I was checking for a leak, sir. There was a damp smell," Adana said, keeping her voice even. "Your keycard shows repeated entry into non-assigned zones. Do not lie to me." He finally turned. His eyes were flat, professional. "You are a domestic employee. Your focus should be on your duties, not on the infrastructure. This is a security facility. Your curiosity is noted. Do not let it become a problem." It was a direct warning. She was now on their radar. Any further exploration would be impossible. She had the old map, but she needed to know if the tunnels were still navigable, if they led outside the wall. She needed a different approach. Her answer came from an unexpected source, Madame Kang. The old woman's health began to decline rapidly in June. Doctors came and went. One afternoon, as Adana adjusted her pillows, Madame Kang gripped her wrist with surprising strength. Her voice was a papery whisper. "They are coming for us, girl. I hear them talking. My son, he thinks he controls everything, but he is blind to the snake in the grass." "Who is coming, madam?" "The men from the shadows, and the one inside who holds the door open for them." Madame Kang's eyes were fierce. "My father's house, it has a back door. You are a clever girl, find it, before they ring the front bell." It was the confirmation she dreaded. The threat was real, and there was an insider involved. The security chief, the head housekeeper, she didn't know. That weekend, Minjun left for an emergency board meeting in Singapore. The compound felt tense, quiet. Adana made her decision. Using the chaos of a scheduled fire alarm test, she slipped into the utility shaft with a backpack containing a flashlight, chalk, a bottle of water, and the old map. She dropped into the tunnel. The air was cold and smelled of earth and mildew. Her flashlight beam revealed a brick archway, crumbling but intact. She started walking, marking her path with chalk arrows. The tunnel branched. According to the map, the left fork led to the old carriage house, now the security bunker. The right fork led to the garden wall and potentially beyond it. She chose right. The tunnel descended slightly. She walked for what felt like 10 minutes until she reached a rusted iron door. It was locked from the other side with a heavy bolt. This was the garden wall exit, but it was sealed shut. Her heart sank. Was this a dead end? Then she noticed a narrower passageway to the side, partially collapsed. She squeezed through, dislodging bricks and cobwebs. This passage wasn't on the map. It was newer, a crude addition. It ended at a ladder leading up to a modern steel hatch. She climbed and pushed. The hatch opened silently into pitch blackness. She climbed out and flashed her light around. She was in a small, concrete-lined room. Shelves held supplies, canned food, water jugs, batteries, a modern panic room, and on one wall, a digital control panel with a single button labeled External Gate Manual Override. This was it, not just an escape tunnel, a back door. And it was stocked, ready and unknown to the security team whose plans relied solely on the main safe room. She memorized the route. It was viable. It was their way out. She returned to the main tunnel, her mind racing with the implications. She could lead the family out, bypassing the main assault, but she had to get them to the utility shaft entrance, which was in a secured service area. As she re-entered the shaft and climbed back toward the laundry room, a new, terrifying thought occurred to her. The insider. If they knew about the tunnels, this escape route could become a trap. She needed to know who the snake in the grass was. She emerged from the shaft, dirty and breathless, just as the compound's external alarms emitted a soft system check chime. It was then she saw him. Security Chief Yi Kim was standing in the laundry room, watching the service elevator's floor indicator. It was descending from the family wing. He wasn't looking at her. He was focused on the elevator, a small, satisfied smile on his face. The elevator wasn't scheduled for any service movement. And in that moment, Adana understood. The breach wouldn't come from over the wall. It would come up through the elevator shaft. The attack wasn't imminent. It was already in motion. Adana didn't run. She walked as if she belonged there, past Kim and out of the laundry room. Her mind was a screaming siren. The elevator was moving. The breach was inside the house. Right now, she had minutes, maybe seconds, to get to Madame Kang. She took the back stairs two at a time, her maids flat silent on the concrete. The family wing was eerily quiet. The usual hum of the climate control was gone. They had cut the power to the internal sensors. She burst into Madame Kang's suite. The old woman was awake, propped up in bed, her eyes wide in the dim emergency lighting. "They are here, aren't they?" Madame Kang said, her voice thin but clear. "We have to go, now." Adana didn't explain. She grabbed the thick robe from the chair, wrapped it around the woman's shoulders, and began maneuvering the wheelchair toward the door. She had rehearsed this move 100 times in her head. "Where is my son, Hai Jin?" "There's no time, I have a way out." As she said it, a crash echoed from the west wing, shattering glass and the distinct pop of suppressed gunfire. The security team was engaging, or being eliminated. Adana pushed the wheelchair into the corridor, heading for the service elevator. It was a risk. If Kim controlled it, they were walking into a trap, but it was the only way down to the utility level. He pressed the call button. Nothing. The power was out. Next to it was a small, red-handled lever behind a glass cover. Manual override fire service. She smashed the glass with her elbow, pulled the lever. With a groan of gears, the doors slid open. The elevator car was dark. She pushed the wheelchair in, then used her body to block the doors from closing as she pried open the maintenance panel beside them. Inside was a manual crank. She turned it. The car began a slow, grinding descent. Down one level, down two. The sounds of conflict were muffled, distant. The car jolted to a stop at the sub-basement. The doors opened onto the concrete service corridor. She pushed Madame Kang out and toward the laundry room. As they passed a junction, she heard running footsteps. She ducked into a supply closet, holding her breath. Two men in black tactical gear, armed with compact rifles, ran past. They weren't speaking Korean. They were speaking Indonesian. The Jakarta Consortium. This was the message. She waited until the footsteps faded, then moved again. The laundry room was empty. She rolled Madame Kang to the open utility shaft. We have to go down there. Madame Kang peered into the darkness. My father's folly, I never thought I would see it. There was no fear in her voice, only a grim acceptance. Adana helped her out of the wheelchair and into a harness she had fashioned from spare linens. She lowered the frail woman into the shaft, then followed, pulling the wheelchair down after her. They might need it. At the bottom, she settled Madame Kang back into the chair, wrapped her in the robe, and grabbed her flashlight. The tunnel awaited. Which way? Madame Kang asked. Away from the carriage house. That's where security is, or where they were. Adana started pushing the chair down the right-hand fork, the one that led to the garden wall. The brick tunnel was narrow, the air thick. The beam of her flashlight danced over cracks and dripping moss. Every sound echoed. They reached the rusted iron door, the sealed exit. Adana guided the chair into the side passage, the one she had found. It was a tighter squeeze. She had to help Madame Kang out of the chair again, half carrying her through the rubble as she dragged the folded wheelchair behind. They emerged into the modern panic room. Madame Kang looked around at the stocked shelves, the control panel. This is not my father's work. No, Adana said, this is your son's, a secret even from his own security chief. She went to the panel and pressed the button labeled External Gate Manual Override. A soft hum filled the room. A section of the wall, perfectly disguised as concrete, slid open to reveal a steep, illuminated staircase leading up. Where does it come out? Madame Kang whispered. The old gatehouse, beyond the perimeter wall. It was the ultimate escape, but as Adana helped the old woman toward the stairs, a terrible thought locked her in place. Minjun, Hai Jin, the children weren't here. She was saving the matriarch, but condemning the rest of the family. Madame Kang saw the conflict on her face. You cannot save everyone by leaving them behind. I can't leave them, Adana said. The plan had been to get Madame Kang out, then guide the others, but the assault had moved too fast. You go up, follow the stairs, it will open into a small building, lock the door, wait. And you? I'm going back. It was madness, but Adana was already moving. She propped Madame Kang at the base of the stairs, ensured she could hold the railing, and handed her the flashlight. I will bring your family, I promise. She ran back through the narrow passage, back into the main tunnel. She had to get to the main house. Her only path was the other fork, the one leading to the old carriage house, now the security bunker, the heart of the conflict. She moved quickly, silently. The tunnel began to slope upward. She saw light ahead, a modern steel door slightly ajar. She could hear voices, Yi Kim's voice. The package is secured in the east wing. The team is clearing the main hall now. The husband is in the panic room, standard protocol. He thinks he's safe. A second voice, accented, replied, and the woman, the wife. Sedated in her sunroom, no threat. The primary target is the old woman. She is the symbol. Without her, the family's public narrative collapses. You guaranteed us access. And you have it. The elevator from the sub-basement opens into her suite. My men are disabling the internal cameras, but there is a complication, the maid. A maid. She is observant. She found the tunnels. I do not know how much she knows. The other voice laughed, a cold sound. Deal with her. This is a surgical operation, not a soap opera. Adana's blood ran cold. The primary target was Minjun. It was Madame Kang. They didn't want to kill the billionaire. They wanted to destroy the family's legacy, its matriarch, in its most secure place. A message about vulnerability, and Kim was orchestrating it all. She had to warn Minjun. He was in the main safe room, following protocol, thinking he was secure. But if Kim controlled the security systems, that safe room could become a tomb. She needed to get to the main residence. She retreated back down the tunnel, her mind racing. There had to be another connection, a branch her map didn't show. Her father's house has more secrets than a government cabinet. Madame Kang's words echoed. She started examining the tunnel walls more carefully, running her hands over the bricks. Near the junction, her fingers found a discrepancy, a section of mortar that was newer, smoother. She pushed. A section of the wall, perfectly balanced, swung inward with a faint sigh. A hidden door. Behind it was a narrow, ascending staircase, carved from stone. It led up. This was it. A direct route into the main house, bypassing the security bunker. She took the stairs, emerging into a dusty, wood-paneled space. A forgotten linen closet on the ground floor of the main residence. She could hear shouting now, clear and close. Gunfire. She crept into the hallway. The grand foyer was a war zone. Two of Kang's security team lay motionless near the shattered front door. 3 attackers were trading fire, with someone barricaded behind the reinforced door of the study. Minjun's safe room was accessed through that study. He was trapped, and the attackers were advancing. Adana ducked back, her heart hammering. She couldn't fight them, but she didn't have to. She knew the house better than they did. She slipped through a servant's passage into the kitchen, then into the pantry. There, behind a rack of wine cabinets, was another old service elevator, a tiny one for delivering food directly to the second-floor dining room. It was on a separate circuit. She prayed it had power. She pressed the button. A light flickered on. The door opened. She stepped in and pressed 2. The elevator groaned upwards. It opened into a small butler's pantry off the formal dining room. She could hear the firefight directly below her now. She crawled to the dining room's balcony railing, overlooking the foyer. Minjun was pinned. She had to get his attention. She saw a crystal vase on a side table. A reckless idea formed. She threw it. It shattered on the marble floor between the attackers and the study door. All heads turned upward. In that split second of confusion, she stood up and screamed, "Minjun, the panic room is compromised. Kim is with them. Go to the service elevator in the kitchen." One of the attackers raised his rifle. Minjun, from behind his barricade, saw her. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. He understood. He fired a burst from his own weapon, providing covering noise, and then she saw him move, crawling back into the study, away from the door. She ducked as bullets chipped the balcony railing near her head. She scrambled back into the butler's pantry, into the elevator, and slammed the door close button. A bullet punched through the wood of the pantry door just as the elevator doors sealed. Down in the kitchen, she burst out of the elevator. Seconds later, Minjun stumbled in from the other doorway, a pistol in his hand, his suit jacket torn. "Where is my mother?" he demanded, his voice raw. "Safe outside the wall. I have a way out, but we have to get Haijin. She's in the sunroom. It's on the other side of the foyer. They control it." Adana thought fast. "The tunnels, there's a branch. It leads under the sunroom. There's an old coal chute, a delivery hatch. I saw it on the original plans." "Can you get to it?" "Yes, but you have to create a diversion. Make them think you're trying to break out the front." Minjun nodded, a new, fierce respect in his eyes. "Give me 2 minutes." He turned and fired 2 shots back down the hallway toward the foyer, shouting orders to non-existent men. "Covering fire, now." The attacker's attention snapped back toward his position. Adana didn't wait. She dashed back into the pantry, to the old coal chute access she had noted but never opened. It was a small, hinged iron door in the floor. She pulled it open. A ladder led down into pungent darkness. She descended into a small, brick-lined cellar filled with ancient furnace debris. On the far wall was another door. She opened it and entered the tunnel network from a different point. She ran, counting her steps, visualizing the map in her head. Left, right. She reached a dead end with a metal grate overhead. This was it, the sunroom floor. She could hear muffled voices above, gentle, soothing voices. One of the attackers was with Haijin. She pushed the grate. It was locked from above. She searched the tunnel floor, found a rusted piece of pipe, and jammed it into the grate's mechanism. She heaved. With a screech, the lock gave way. The grate flew open. Adana erupted into the sunroom in a cloud of dust. A man in black tactical gear stood over Haijin, who was slumped in a chaise lounge, drowsy. He spun, rifle rising. Adana didn't stop. She swung the rusted pipe with all her strength. It connected with the side of his head with a sickening thud. He crumpled. She rushed to Haijin. "Mrs. Kang, we have to go now." Haijin's eyes fluttered, drugged and confused. "Su Yon." She's safe, come with me. Adana half dragged, half carried the woman toward the open grate, down into the tunnel. She pulled the grate closed behind them just as more footsteps pounded into the sunroom above. She led the disoriented Hai-Jin through the labyrinth, back toward the central junction. Min-jun was supposed to meet them there, fighting his way back from the kitchen. But when she reached the junction, it was empty. No Min-jun. Instead, she heard a new sound from the direction of the security bunker, the deep, rolling shudder of an explosion. The bunker door had been breached. And from the other direction, the way she had just come, she heard the distinct sound of the coal chute grate being forced open again. They were in the tunnels. The hunters had become the hunted. She was trapped in the dark with a drugged woman, and the only way out was through a gauntlet of professional soldiers who now knew their secret escape route was compromised. Adana did the only thing left. She killed the flashlight. Total darkness swallowed them. She pulled Hai-Jin into a shallow recess in the tunnel wall, a maintenance niche, and clamped a hand over the woman's mouth. They stood there, two statues in the black, as bootsteps echoed from two directions, closing in. The team from the sunroom came first. Two men, their helmet lights cutting beams through the dust. They paused at the junction, just meters away. He said the maid and the wife went this way, one said in Indonesian. They can't have gone far, check the side passages. Their lights swept the walls. One beam passed directly over Adana's hiding spot, illuminating the toe of her shoe for a terrifying second before moving on. She stopped breathing. Then, from the other direction, came Yi Kim's voice. Forget the wife. The primary target is the matriarch. She's not in her suite. The maid moved her. Find which tunnel they used. We found a wheelchair by a sealed door in the garden tunnel, one of the Indonesian men replied. Then they didn't go out that way. They doubled back. They're still in the system, spread out. She's an untrained woman pushing an 82-year-old in a chair. She cannot be far. The two groups converged at the junction, a tense, armed huddle in the gloom. Adana listened, every muscle locked. Kim, your intel said the family knew nothing about these tunnels, the lead Indonesian operative said, his voice edged with suspicion. They didn't. The maid is a variable, an unpredictable one. A variable that just cost us the primary objective. Our agreement was for a clean, symbolic strike. Capture the matriarch inside the fortress, broadcast the image, release her unharmed but humiliated. Now the house is hot, the police frequencies are lighting up, and the main target is missing. This is becoming an extraction under fire. The fee just doubled. Kim's silence was heavy. The fee is unchanged. I will deliver the old woman. She cannot have gotten out. There are only two viable exits, and my men control both surface points. She is hiding, and I know exactly where. He said it with such cold certainty that Adana's heart froze. How? The panic room, Kim continued. The one the son built without telling me. It has an external gate. She'll be there, thinking she's safe. It's a box. There's no way out but the way she came in. He knew about the panic room, which meant he had always known. The entire escape route was a trap. He had let her find it, let her think she had discovered a secret, only to shepherd Madame Kang right into a sealed container. The realization was a physical blow. She had led Madame Kang to the one place Kim expected her to go. She had made the perfect mistake. The men moved off, their footsteps receding down the tunnel toward the panic room branch. Adana waited until the silence was absolute, then let out a shuddering breath. Hai-Jin was trembling violently. He knows about the room, Hai-Jin whispered, the drugs fogging her terror but not eliminating it. Yes, we have to warn her, we have to get to her first. But how? The tunnel to the panic room was now a kill zone. She needed another way. Then she remembered the original map, the tunnel to the carriage house, the security bunker. It was behind her now, past the junction where Kim had just been. If Kim had pulled most of his men to hunt for Madame Kang, the bunker might be lightly guarded. And the bunker had something the tunnels didn't, communications, a way to call for real help. It was a desperate, backward move, running toward the heart of the betrayal, but it was the only move left. Come on, she whispered to Hai-Jin. We're going the other way. She led the unsteady woman back through the tunnel, past the junction, toward the upward slope that led to the security bunker's steel door. It was still ajar. She peered inside. The bunker was a scene of controlled chaos. One of Kim's men lay dead near the blown-open main entrance. The rest were gone, hunting, but the room was not empty. At the main monitoring station, head in his hands, was a young technician in a security uniform. He couldn't have been more than 22. He was crying. Adana slipped inside, pulling Hyjin in behind her. The technician jumped, fumbling for a sidearm. "Don't," Adana said, her hands up. "I'm not with them, I'm the maid. Where is everyone?" The kid, his name tag said Park, just stared. He shot Sergeant Cho. He just shot him for questioning the order to stand down. He said it was a drill and then they just came in. They knew every blind spot. "Who is he?" "Chief Kim, he's working with them. He shut down the perimeter response. He locked the police alert in a queue. He said it was a test, but they're killing people." The words tumbled out in a horrified rush. Adana moved to the main console. Screens showed various parts of the compound. The foyer, empty except for bodies. The sunroom, now with 3 armed men. The garden, silent. And one screen showed a grainy black and white feed of a concrete room. The panic room. Madame Kang was inside, sitting at the base of the stairs, her face turned toward the hidden camera with a look of regal defiance. "Can you see the tunnel approach?" Adana asked. Park nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard. He brought up another feed. It showed the tunnel leading to the panic room's hidden entrance. 4 figures were advancing cautiously down it. Kim and 3 Indonesian operatives. They were 2 minutes away. "Can you lock the panic room from here? Seal the internal hatch?" I don't know, it's on a separate system, but maybe," he typed frantically. "The system is asking for a biometric, Chief Kim's or Mr. Kang." "Try Mr. Kang, use the backup override, the disaster protocol." Park looked at her, stunned. "How do you know about that?" "Just try." He entered a series of commands. A red box flashed on the screen. Override accepted. Panic room internal hatch manual lock engaged. On the feed, they saw a heavy steel bolt slide into place across the inside of the hatch at the top of the stairs. Madame Kang looked up at the sound, a faint smile touching her lips. Kim's team reached the panic room's tunnel entrance. They tried the hatch. It didn't budge. Kim's face, visible in the helmet light, contorted in fury. He spoke into a radio. "She's locked in. The system has been overridden from the bunker. Park, you little traitor, I know it's you." Park flinched, as if struck. Adana grabbed the console microphone. "She's not coming out, Kim, and you're out of time. The police will be here soon." Kim's laugh crackled over the bunker's speaker. "The police are being delayed by a conveniently timed traffic accident 3 blocks away. I have 15 more minutes. And now I have you too. Park, if you want to live, you will unlock this hatch and then put a bullet in the Maid." The young technician stared at the microphone in horror. Adana let go of the mic and turned to Park. "Is there a way to flood the tunnel, fire suppression, anything?" Park shook his head. "No, but there's the old boiler, the original one. The tunnel runs right past its fuel oil tank. It's decommissioned, but it's still full. It's a hazard." An idea, terrible and final, formed in Adana's mind. "Can you trigger a leak from here?" "I can open the manual release valve. It's on the network for environmental monitoring, but it's thousands of liters. It will fill the tunnel." "Do it," Adana said. "They'll drown or suffocate or—" "Do it now." Park, shaking, entered the commands. On a schematic, a valve icon turned from green to red. In the tunnel feed, they saw nothing at first. Then, a dark, viscous liquid began to seep from a pipe along the wall, spreading across the tunnel floor. Kim's team noticed it. One of the operatives crouched, touched it, smelled it. Oil, fuel oil. Kim understood instantly. He looked directly into the camera, his eyes burning with hatred. "You think this changes anything? You're in a bunker with one door. I'm coming for you." The feed went dead. He'd shot the camera. Adana's victory was ash. She had saved Madame Kang from immediate capture, but she had trapped herself. The bunker's main entrance was destroyed. The only other way out was back into the tunnel now filling with oil and with 4 armed, enraged men who knew she was here. Then a new sound, a pounding on the bunker's main steel door from the compound side, a voice, muffled but frantic. "Hello, is anyone in there? This is the police." Park's face lit with hope. He ran to the door's intercom. "We're in here, we have civilians, help. Stand back, we are breaching." This was it, rescue. But as Park moved to hit the door release, Adana shouted, "No, don't open it." She had seen it on the monitor, the camera covering the compound side of the bunker door. There were no police. There was one man in tactical gear holding a battering ram, and standing beside him, smiling calmly, was Choi, the head housekeeper. The final piece of the betrayal clicked into place. Choi was the insider. She had access to everything. She had reported Adana's curiosity. She had likely given Kim the panic room codes. She was the one holding the door open. "It's not the police," Adana said, her voice hollow. Park looked at the monitor and froze. Choi waved at the camera. A new voice came over the intercom. Smooth, cultured, it was Min Jun. "Adana, are you in there?" He was alive, but where was he? The signal was weak, patchy. "Min Jun, where are you?" "The gatehouse with my mother. Your escape route worked. I saw the tunnel schematic in the panic room controls and followed it out. The police are on their way, but they're being blocked. Listen to me. Choi is compromised. Do not trust anyone. You must get to the roof." "The roof?" "There's a helicopter pad. I have a pilot on standby, but he's being told to stand down by security. You have to get to the roof and signal him manually. There's a flare gun in the bunker's emergency locker. Use it. He'll see it and come." A way out, but the roof was 4 floors up, through a house filled with hostile forces. "What about Hai-jin? She's with me." "Bring her, but you have to move now. Kim will be at the bunker door in minutes." As if on cue, a massive impact shook the steel door. The faux police were battering it. It wouldn't hold long. Park pointed to a heavy cabinet labeled "Emergency." Adana broke the lock. Inside was the flare gun, along with a first aid kit and a set of keys on a fob labeled "Service Elevator, Master." The service elevator, it went to all floors, including the roof, but its main access was in the kitchen, which was now a war zone. "Is there another way to the service elevator?" Adana asked Park. "There's a secondary access, in the bunker, for moving heavy equipment. It's a freight lift. It goes up to the garage, and from there you can get to the main house's service elevator." It was a path, a dangerous, narrow path. They ran to the back of the bunker, to a large freight elevator. Park hit the call button. The doors opened. They piled in Adana, Hai-jin, and Park. As the doors closed, they heard the final, rending crash of the bunker's main door giving way. The elevator rose slowly, too slowly. They could hear shouting from below. It opened into the garage. It was dark, empty. The family's vehicles sat silent. Across the garage was the door to the main house's service corridor. They ran for it. Just as they reached the door, it opened. Standing there was Choi. In her hand was not a weapon, but a tablet. She looked at them, her expression one of profound sadness. "I am sorry, Adana, truly, but my daughter, they have my daughter." Behind her, 2 Indonesian operatives stepped into view, rifles raised. Adana raised the flare gun, not at the men, but at the sleek, low-slung sports car parked nearby, a fuel cell hydrogen vehicle. She pulled the trigger. The flare shot out, a blinding arc of red light. It struck the car's rear quarter panel and stuck, burning with intense, white-hot heat. For a second, nothing. Then, the car's safety systems screamed. A high-pressure jet of hydrogen gas erupted from the emergency vent, meeting the open flame. The explosion was not fiery, but a concussive, oxygen-sucking blast of pure force. It threw them all backward. The garage door blew off its hinges. Alarms shrieked. Deafened, her ears ringing, Adana dragged Hai-jin to her feet. Park was unconscious. Choi and the two operatives were down, unmoving. The way to the service corridor was clear, filled with smoke. She left Park, he was safer unconscious, and half-carried Hae-jin through the smoke into the service corridor to the elevator. She stabbed the button for the roof. As the elevator climbed, she could see through the small window the chaos below. Flames in the garage, figures running, and on the rooftop helipad, illuminated by a single beacon, the silhouette of a helicopter, its blades beginning to turn. They had made it, they were almost out. The elevator doors opened onto the roof. The night wind whipped at them. The helicopter was there, its pilot visible in the cockpit, giving her a thumbs up. She ran toward it, Hae-jin stumbling beside her. They were 20 meters away, then 10. A single shot rang out, sharp and precise over the rotor wash. Hae-jin cried out and fell, clutching her leg. Adana dropped beside her. At the roof access door, holding a smoking pistol, stood Yi Kim. He was covered in oil and blood, one arm hanging useless, but his other hand was steady. "No one leaves," he shouted over the wind. "The deal is dead, but the message will be sent. The Kang family wiped out in their own home, starting with you." He raised the pistol, aiming not at Adana, but at the helicopter's fuel line. He was going to strand them, then pick them off one by one. Adana looked at the flare gun in her hand. It had one shot left, a flare against a bullet, a Maid against a special forces traitor. And then from the shadows behind Kim, a figure emerged, slow, leaning on a metal pipe for support. Min-jun. He was bleeding from his temple, but his eyes were clear. "You forgot, Yi," Min-jun said, his voice carrying. "You designed the security, but I paid for it." He pressed a small, keychain-sized device in his hand. Every light on the roof, the beacon, the perimeter lights, the helipad markers, blazed to maximum intensity, focusing in a blinding, dazzling cone directly on Yi Kim. Kim recoiled, blinded, firing wildly. Adana didn't hesitate. She raised the flare gun and fired her last shot. It wasn't at Kim. It was high into the air, a brilliant red star bursting over the compound, a signal seen for miles. In the distance, the real police sirens, no longer blocked, wailed as they finally broke through the cordon and streamed toward the gates. Kim, blinking spots from his eyes, turned his pistol toward Min-jun. But he never got to fire. The rooftop access door behind him burst open again, and there, held up by two federal agents, her face pale but fierce, stood Madame Kang Soo-yeon. She pointed a bony finger at her former security chief. "That is the man," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Arrest him." In that moment of shattered authority, Kim's will broke. He dropped the gun. The storm was over, but as Adana knelt to tend to Hae-jin's wound, she looked across the rooftop at the reunited family, Min-jun helping his mother, the injured wife, the arriving authorities. She saw the charred garage, the burning car, the bodies being carried out. She had saved them, but the house, the fortress, was in ruins, and the woman who had orchestrated their survival was now, in the glaring dawn light, just a maid in a torn uniform, standing alone in the center of the helipad, surrounded by a rescue she no longer belonged to. In the silence that followed the sirens, Adana's hands stopped shaking. The paramedics took Hae-jin on a stretcher. The police led Yi Kim away in handcuffs, his head down. Reporters swarmed the gates. And through it all, Adana stood, forgotten, until a young detective finally approached and asked, "Who are you?" She was taken to the station not as a hero, but as a material witness, and as a potential immigration violation. Her tourist visa had expired 3 weeks prior. Saving a billionaire's family did not change the letter of the law. She spent the night in a holding room, given tea and a blanket, while the legal and political machinery of Seoul began to grind around the Kang family attack. The story broke at dawn. Billionaire's compound siege, insider betrayal foiled BY domestic worker. The media, fed by police leaks, had the broad strokes, but the narrative was messy. Was she a hero or an illegal alien, a genius or a lucky bystander? Min-jun Kang arrived at the station himself at 9 a.m., flanked by lawyers. He didn't send them. He came. He found Adana in the interview room, staring at the wall. "You're coming home," he said. "I don't have a home here," she replied, her voice flat. "My visa is expired. They will deport me." "No," he said, placing a document on the table. It was a formal employment contract. The title was not Maid. It was Director of Residential Security and Historical Integration. "What is this?" "A job, a legal one, with a proper visa sponsorship. You know the physical vulnerabilities of my property better than any security firm in the world. You uncovered a conspiracy my $10 million security system missed. I am not offering you charity. I am hiring the most qualified person for the job." She looked at the salary. It was more money than her entire family in Nigeria saw in 5 years. "And what would I do? Braid your mother's hair and check the cameras. You would map every inch of the estate. You would design the new security protocols. You would teach my new security team what to look for. And yes," he said, a faint, tired smile touching his lips, "you would braid my mother's hair, she insists." Madame Kang Suyeon was the next to arrive. She came in her wheelchair, pushed by a nurse, and dismissed the lawyers and police with a wave of her hand. She took Adana's hands in her own, which were cold but steady. "In my father's time," she said, "they would have given you a medal. Now they give you paperwork. It is less poetic but more useful. Sign the papers, child, stay." "Why?" Adana asked, the exhaustion and shock finally breaking through. "Why do you want me to stay? I am just a maid." "You are not just anything," Madame Kang said sharply. "You are the woman who saw the map in the walls when everyone else saw only plaster. You are the woman who pushed an old lady through the dark and then went back into the fire for her children. My son is offering you a job title. I am offering you a place. The choice is yours." Adana signed. The legal and public relations battle that followed was its own kind of war. The immigration authorities were pressured to fast-track her new visa. The media wanted interviews. Talk shows offered her money for her story. She refused them all. Her first act as director was to seal the tunnels, not with concrete, but with reinforced, monitored access points. She turned her handwritten notebook into a formal, digital architectural survey. The investigation into Yi Kim and Choi, the head housekeeper, unraveled a larger plot. Kim was not just a corrupt security chief. He was a deep-cover asset for the Indonesian consortium, planted years earlier. Choi's daughter had indeed been threatened, but it was later revealed the daughter was already safely abroad. The threat was a bluff, exploiting a mother's fear. Choi cooperated fully, providing evidence that implicated not just Kim, but several mid-level officials who had helped delay the police response. The Kang family, physically recovering, was psychologically shattered. Hyejin's leg wound healed, but the trauma of the sedation, of being a target in her sunroom, left her with a severe anxiety disorder. She began spending most of her time at a quiet coastal estate. The teenage children returned from boarding school but found the compound, now swarming with construction crews and new security, unrecognizable. They chose to stay with their mother by the sea. Only Madame Kang seemed to grow stronger. The woman who had been compressed into silence by age and infirmity had found her voice again on the rooftop, pointing her finger at her tormentor. She demanded a role in the rebuilding. She and Adana spent hours in the garden, going over the original estate plans, debating what to preserve and what to seal forever. Minjun was a changed man. The arrogant billionaire who thought his money built an impenetrable fortress had seen it torn open from within. He became quieter, more observant. He fired his entire executive security team and handed the rebuild project to Adana with a simple directive: make it safe, but make it a home. I don't want another fortress. One Tuesday evening, 3 months after the attack, Adana was in the kitchen, not the main kitchen, but a smaller, private one in the restored East Wing. She was cooking jollof rice. The smell of onions, tomatoes, and Scotch bonnet peppers filled the air. Minjun walked in, as he often did now. He sat at the counter, watching her stir the pot. "The board approved the new security budget," he said. "No objections. They saw the footage from the bunker. They saw what you did." Adana nodded, stirring. "Good. My mother is writing a book. about the architectural history of the estate. She wants you to co-author it. Adana stopped stirring. I'm not a writer. She says you are. She says your notes are better history than any professor. She wants the world to know that the soul of this house wasn't saved by money or guns, but by a woman who could read its bones. Silence settled between them, comfortable now. He reached for a spoon to taste the rice, but she tapped his hand away with her own spoon. Not yet, she said. He smiled, a real one, still teaching me. Someone has to. He looked at her then, not as an employer, not as a beneficiary of her courage, but as a man looking at a woman who had fundamentally altered the universe of his life. Adana, the contract, it's for 3 years. What happens after? She met his gaze. I don't know, I used to think I wanted to go home, but home wasn't a place. It was a feeling of being useful, of being seen. Your mother sees me. This house, in a strange way, it sees me now too. And me, the question was barely a whisper. Before she could answer, a clear, strong voice called from the adjoining sitting room. Do not answer that, Adana. He is my son and I love him, but he is emotionally clumsy and will ruin a perfectly good pot of rice with his sentimentality. They both laughed. The sound of Madame Kang's voice, teasing alive, was the sound of a healing house. The final surprise came not from the family, but from the government. A month later, a formal ceremony was held at the National Police Agency. Adana was summoned, told only to attend. She arrived, expecting more paperwork. Instead, she was led into an auditorium filled with officers, officials, and press. On the stage was Madame Kang, Min Jun, and the Commissioner General of the Korean National Police. Today, the commissioner began, we recognize an extraordinary act of civic courage that exposed critical flaws in how we protect the vulnerable, even the seemingly most secure. The Kang family attack revealed not just a failure of private security, but a failure of imagination. We prepare for threats from the outside. We are often blind to the architecture of betrayal within. He then detailed Adana's actions, not as a lucky maid, but as a tactical analyst. Her mapping, her deduction of the insider threat, her use of historical infrastructure to effect a rescue, her decisive actions in the bunker and on the roof. He called it a masterclass in situational awareness and civilian-led crisis resolution. Then he awarded her the Medal of Public Security, the highest civilian honor for bravery. It was the first time in the award's history that it had been given to a non-citizen. As the medal was placed around her neck, the flashbulbs popping, Adana looked out at the crowd. She saw Min Jun nodding, his pride evident. She saw Madame Kang smiling with tears in her eyes. And she thought of her grandmother, a world away, who had told her she had strong hands meant to hold people up. She had never imagined they would hold up an entire family or receive a nation's gratitude. After the ceremony, as they walked to the car, Madame Kang handed her a small, wrapped box. Inside was not jewelry, but an old, brass key on a simple chain. This is the master key to the East Wing, Madame Kang said. It was my father's. It opens every door, even the ones they think are sealed. The house is yours, Adana, not as a servant, as its keeper, its guardian. Adana fastened the chain around her neck. The key rested beside the cool metal of the medal. That evening back at the compound, she walked the quiet corridors. The repairs were nearly complete. The new security system, designed by her, was subtle, integrated, leaning more on sensors and AI than armed men. She stopped at the entrance to the garden, where the rusted boiler access door had been. It was now a restored, beautiful wooden door, with a new plaque that read, in Korean and English, "The way through in gratitude to Adana Okoy." She walked to the East Wing, to Madame Kang's sitting room. The old woman was dozing by the fire, a book open in her lap. Adana adjusted the blanket over her knees. Madame Kang's eyes opened. "You are thinking of leaving," she said, not a question. "The thought occurs," Adana admitted. "The job is done, the house is safe, your family is healing. And you have a medal and a key, but you wonder if that is enough, if this is your story or just a chapter in someone else." Madame Kang sighed. "I felt that way for 70 years, the daughter, then the wife, then the mother, then the invalid. I was a footnote in Kang family history, until you decided I was worth fighting for. You gave me back my narrative, Adana. Do not give up your own so easily. This is your chapter, but you get to write the next one, here or elsewhere. But know this, you will always have a home in this house, and a family in us. Adana squeezed her hand. She left the old woman to her sleep and walked out into the garden. The night was clear. The scars of the attack were still visible, a patched section of wall, new trees planted where old ones had burned, but life was returning. Minjun found her there. He stood beside her, looking up at the same stars. The helicopter pilot, Minjun said after a while. The one on the roof. He submitted his report. He said when he saw the flare, and then you standing between the wounded and the gunman, he thought you were the most terrifying and beautiful thing he'd ever seen. He said you looked like an ancient warrior goddess. I thought you should know that. Adana shook her head, a faint smile on her lips. I was just scared. That's what makes it courage, he said. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't try to kiss her. He simply stood with her in the quiet. Take all the time you need, Adana. The chapter is yours. We'll be here when you decide how it ends. He walked back inside, leaving her alone in the garden. She touched the key at her neck, then the medal. She looked at the house, no longer a fortress, but a place being slowly, carefully turned back into a home. And she realized that in saving the Kang family, she had for the first time built something for herself, a place where she was seen, a purpose forged in the dark of a forgotten tunnel. She had arrived with one suitcase and an expired visa. She would leave whenever that day came as Adana Okoi, not just a maid, a guardian, a historian. A hero. The story was over, but her story, she understood finally, was just beginning. So what does the story of Adana Okoi leave us with? Not just a tale of survival, but a blueprint, a map of how the most overlooked person in any room might hold the key to its survival, if only someone would think to hand them the blueprints. We live in a world that builds fortresses. We invest in walls, in guns, in encrypted systems. We trust the visible shields. The Kang family did everything right by that logic. They hired the best security, bought the best technology, and followed every protocol for modern threat management. And they were almost destroyed because they failed to value the quiet knowledge of the woman who cleaned their floors. Adana's weapon wasn't a gun. It was attention. It was the patience to notice a discrepancy in a floor plan, the respect to listen to an old woman's stories about her father's secrets, the courage to trust a hunch drawn in a notebook over a $10 million sensor array. She represents a fundamental truth, that the most critical intelligence in any system often resides not in the control center, but in the periphery, in the minds of those who operate its forgotten corners. Her story forces an uncomfortable question. How many Adanas are we ignoring right now? In our businesses, in our communities, in our own homes, the domestic worker, the night janitor, the junior analyst, the quiet intern, the people we classify by their function, not their potential. How much resilience are we losing because we never think to ask them what they see? The Kang compound siege was a crisis of violence, but it was solved by a woman practicing a different kind of skill entirely, the art of seeing a house not as a collection of rooms, but as a living history, a story written in brick and mortar. She didn't fight the attackers on their terms. She changed the battlefield. She used the house's own forgotten memory against them. That is the ultimate takeaway. Resilience doesn't always mean being stronger than the force coming at you. Sometimes, it means being wiser about the ground you stand on. It means understanding that the hidden passages, the secret strengths, are often already there, waiting in the walls. They just need someone with the eyes to see them and the heart to use them for shelter instead of escape. Adana Okoi stayed. She became the guardian of the very secrets she used to save a family. She turned a legacy of hidden passages into a new system of open, integrated protection. The medal she wears and the key around her neck are more than honors. They are symbols of a seismic shift, from invisible to essential, from overlooked to the one they all now look to. Her journey reframes the very idea of a hero, not a superhuman figure who arrives from the outside, but an ordinary person who was already inside, who finally decides to step forward and use the knowledge everyone else dismissed. The world is full of hidden tunnels, both literal and metaphorical, and it is full of people who have, quietly, been mapping them all along. The next time you walk into a building, an organization, or a relationship, ask yourself, what don't I see? Who here knows the walls better than I do? The answer might just be the person you've been trained not to notice. The strength of any structure, in the end, isn't just in its design, but in the care of those who know its every crack and cornerstone. If you found this story of hidden knowledge and unexpected courage compelling, there are countless more like it waiting to be uncovered. Stories that change how we see the world, and more importantly, how we see the people in it. For more deep dives into the overlooked, the underestimated, and the quietly revolutionary, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.